All right, so this video is going to focus on how to solve a rational expression equation here. So when you're dealing with equations that have rational expressions in them, so essentially you're dealing with equations that have numbers and variables and stuff thrown into their numerator and their denominator. Now, when I look at this particular example here, or most equations that have rational expressions in them, they follow very similar method as clearing fractions. So if you are familiar with clearing fractions, that's only going to help you out when it comes to these problems here. If not, don't worry, I'll get you familiar with it. So when it comes to solving these kind of equations here, there's really just one step or one rule that you need to keep in mind in order to solve this. And that one rule says to multiply the entire equation by the lowest common denominator. So you need to look and compare every denominator in that equation. So if I'm looking at this example, that means I'm looking at 5x, 3x, and 45. And I need to come up with the common denominator of all three of those. Okay, so first, let's start with our numbers, right? Let's figure out a common denominator for our numbers, which would be, just pretend that all we had were these numbers here. How would you find a common denominator? So it's the first number that they all have in common as far as their multiples are concerned. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, so on. Make a list with 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, so on. 45, 90, until you find a number that they all match up. Now, when you're dealing with three different numbers here, three different denominators, I would recommend taking the two smaller ones and checking to see, do they go into the bigger one? Does 5 go into 45? Does 3 go into 45? And for this particular example, both 5 and 3 actually do go into 45. So that means 45 would be my common denominator as far as my numbers are concerned. All right, so if I'm finding a common denominator, so far I have a 45. But it's not just a 45 because we also have these x's over here. So when it comes to variables, especially if it's just a single variable like that, when it comes to your variables terms, those definitely need to be included in your common denominator. So because all I have is x's, I'm going to tack on that x over here. Had I had an x and a y, I would add an x and a y. You need to tack on all the different variables that make up your denominators. And what you want is you want the highest power of each one. What is the most x's that I have in each denominator? So for example, this first fraction over here, I have 1x. This middle one, I have 1x. Over here, I have 0. So at most, I have 1. I do not have more than 1x in any one of these denominators. So since 1 is the most, we're just going to tack on 1x here. Had one of these maybe been an x squared, then 2 would have been the most, and I would have added a 2 over here to my common denominator. But for this example, it's just a 1. So here, 45x is my common denominator. So then what we're going to do, now that we have found our common denominator, what we're going to do is we are going to multiply the entire equation by the common denominator. So we're going to multiply everything by 45x. So I'm going to go ahead and put that 45x over a 1, and what we're going to do is we're going to distribute that to the entire equation. So let's see, 45 times 6, or 45x times 6, 45 times 6 is equal to 270x over 1 times 5x is 5x. Bring over this minus sign. 45x times 2, well, that gives me a 90x over 1 times 3x is 3x. And this is going to equal to 45x times negative 8. So let's see, 5 times 8, that's 40, 360. So negative 360x there over 1 times 45 is 45. So this is just what I get when I multiply the 45x to everything in the equation. But what's going to help us out here is now we're going to simplify these. And when we simplify these fractions here, we should be left with nice, pretty whole numbers to make this equation that much easier for us to work out. So let's simplify. 270 divided by 5. So let's see, 270 divided by 5. 5 goes in there 54 times. And these x's are going to cancel. Minus 90 divided by 3 is 30. And these x's are going to cancel. And that's going to equal to 360 divided by 45. So let's see, 8 times, I think. And we're going to drop down this x with it. All right, now that we have simplified that, we are left with this equation here. So now it's just a matter of seeing if there's anything else that needs to get simplified and solve for x. So the first thing on the left-hand side, I notice I have these two numbers that can be subtracted. So 54 minus 30. So let's see, we get a 24 there when we subtract that, and that's going to equal to 8x. Then the only other thing left to do here is to divide out the coefficient. Remember, this is 8 times x, so we do the opposite and divide, making sure we do it to both sides, and we get that x is equal to 3. 24 divided by 8 is 3. So x is equal to 3. We are done with this equation here. So remember that you need to multiply the entire equation by the common denominator. That way it's going to get rid of our ugly fractions for us to make this that much easier for us to solve.